Hello, welcome to Campulse TV. This is Poorna Pragna reporting from JNC. Today we have with us Mr. Rahul Dayama, a branding and communication specialist and a former journalist. I welcome you, sir, on behalf of Center for Media Studies to Mediatron.
Thanks, Poorna. Thanks for having me.
In your experience as a journalist, you've covered different beats, you've interviewed different people. What are some challenges that helped you grow through your profession as a journalist?
Yeah, I can tell you I was not as confident as you are when I started off. So it is a lot of practice. So the first few times when I had to face the camera, how I really started off was I really used to practice in front of the mirror. And it's not a joke, like how actors act in front of the mirror and expressions. I used to read out scripts in front of the mirror again and again. But when you face a camera, it's an altogether different relationship, right? It has to be personal. It has to seem like you're talking to someone.
Yes.
And the camera ends up being your best friend. So the first time I remember when I recorded a P2C, which is piece to camera, I took about 10 takes to get it right because I'd fumble, I would get something wrong. But then after that, you develop a very close relationship with the camera. I think it's practice, practice, and practice. So one big challenge was just facing the camera. At times, like my cameraman used to turn the camera on. Now it's a full studio. But my cameraman used to turn the camera on. I'm live and he's left the studio, right? So I am just with the camera. So but you're sort of lakhs of people seeing you on the other side. I think then you build an equation with the camera. I started treating the camera as a friend. So it's when you sort of just clapped, I become a different person in front of the camera. I think you build that relationship. So that was one challenge, facing that camera. Two, I think with people also, right? It takes time on how we develop a relationship. As reporters, we're supposed to chase people, ask for an interview when they're not willing to give an interview. Like I have to get former Chief Minister Kumaraswamy's interview. I've toppled on a sofa to catch him. So I have had those experiences where it's a lot of convincing. But I think again, investing time in building relationships, like we do with our friends, right? It's a give and take where you have to be there for the person to be there for you. So you build that trust by constantly meeting them, by not having a biased agenda, by sitting down and telling them, I'd like to interview you. Are you open to it? So I think that also I was able to do it. I'm generally an extrovert person as a journalist, but personally I'm not as an extrovert person, but it took me time. So I used to meet people a lot more. I spent some time like we did before starting the interview, talking to the person, getting them eased to the camera and then going. These were the two big challenges. I think practice, time helps. I think if you do something for years, you just become so good at it.
So, as you mentioned now, you've interviewed different people, Mr. Kumaraswamy, the Chief Minister, and you also mentioned you interviewed Deepika Padukone and other Bollywood stars. So, when you interview people of different powers, of different fields of work, of different backgrounds, does the interview style differ from person to person?
Yeah, very, very good question. Definitely differs. So while I was a business journalist, I've also interviewed business tycoons like Ms. Kiran Majumdar Shah, Narayan Murthy, Nandan Nilekani. So this big, business tycoons. I've also interviewed, say, a common man when I'm discussing about, say, when I'm covering the elections, right? You're a reporter, I come to you and say, hey, are you excited? You're a first-time reporter. So it does vary, the style. But I think I can't really be up and personal immediately, say with a politician, right? It is a lot more formal. So it depends on who the subject is. If while I was interviewing Deepika Padukone, it was slightly informal, I could crack a few jokes. That's not the case when you interview politicians. So the interview styles do differ. And again, that is through practice. You also, what helps is doing a lot of research on the person you're interviewing. A certain politician may actually enjoy a light joke. Someone may not. So doing that research helps. So I used to do extensive research on people that I was meeting. I remember one really popular cricketer, I won't take his name, he asked me not to ask a particular question, but I did, and he was really upset and he left the interview midway. So you have instances like that. But as journalists, I think you also learn to trust your gut. And by gut, I mean instinct, where you know something may be off, let me not do this, let me give it a try. I think we live in the moment. It's so important to just, when I'm interviewing you, for example, I need to be here 100%, which is why when I see the camera turns on, you have to switch off from the outside world. And that helps you do a better job. Yes, so the interview styles do vary. I think if you're interviewing a commoner, like I said, for elections, then the tone is different. But what does not change is you have to be professional. The basics remain the same. You have to ask the right questions. You have to think through what you're asking. You cannot confuse the interviewer, whoever it is. And sometimes just being pertinent, right? If someone is not understanding, answering what you want, you keep asking them the same thing, and that helps.
Talking about reporting and journalistic writing in general, we are in a profession where people expect us to not have a bias and be objective. So, in the profession, do you think objectivity it exists, or is it just an abstract concept that people want us to follow through?
Again, excellent question. Good job on the research. But I think objectivity, people are going to lie if they say that I'm absolutely objective when I'm facing the camera. Very smaller opinions around your political bias, religion, we all have our opinions. What is most important is that should not come out in the reportage. And by that I mean it's important for you to really differentiate that you're just a medium as a reporter, as a journalist, as an anchor, but your larger message and audience is the lakhs of people sitting there. So you have to be able to cover all aspects of the story. If, for example, someone hates, does not agree with the ideology of a particular political party, and that party wins the election, that does not mean I'm going to say they didn't deserve to win it, right? So I think being objective is the foremost duty of a journalist. There are some slip-ups that happen, like if I'm cheering, say, for RCB and Kings 11 Punjab ends up, but you're in Bangalore, you will say, damn, we are sad, we are upset. On lighter moments, it's fine, but things around religious sentiment, around politics, non-negotiable for us to be absolutely objective, ask tough questions to all parties. And that is rule number one of journalism. That's what we're all taught in journalism schools. So does it happen all the time? Maybe there are some slip-ups, but we should all, as journalism students, as people aspiring to be in the media or once in the media, ensure that we are consciously asking ourselves, hey, am I not wavering? And if I'm wavering, can I stop and be objective again?
So you've worked as a journalist and then you've transitioned into branding and communications. Both of the fields of work are a subset of media and communications, but they have some things in similar. Like you mentioned that storytelling is a similar thing in both the professions. So if there is one thing, or if there are some things that differentiate these two fields, what could they be?
Yeah, so great again, Poorna. I think storytelling is at the heart. As a journalist, you're sort of telling a story. As a brand, you're telling a story to the audience, but as a brand strategist or as a communications person, I'm telling the story of the brand to certain people. So here the topic, so to say, changes, but we are all in the business of storytelling. Good. What's different? And I should tell you, one, I think in the media, just pampered so much more. Camera is your best friend. You're reaching out to lakhs of people. That gets switched off, right? Once you move to this side. 6 years I was a journalist, and then I decided to move. I may be on Twitter, I may be on LinkedIn, but usually on a usual good day, you'd get about 20-30 calls from PR folks, from people pitching you, inviting you to events. All of that, once people know you're out, slowly tend to stop. So, I think the importance that you get as a media reporter or as an anchor, that stops. Here, it's honestly hard work on both the sides, but I think the public visibility is a big differentiator. You don't have that visibility unless you end up being a reporter for your brand. If I decided to put out some videos about my brand, but again, the audience segment is very small. What is another thing that's differentiated is, I think branding or the corporate side requires a very different skill set. As a reporter, I could be a single reporter in Bangalore. I work with my cameraman. At best, I talk to my driver who drives me, so 3-4 people, and I talk to my head office where I send my story. But as a branding professional, I work with multiple stakeholders. I work with the HR team. I have to work with if I'm in a bank, I have to work with the operations team. I have to work with the marketing team. I have to work with the CEO's office. So you end up working a lot more with different stakeholders. As a reporter, honestly, if you're a print reporter, you could just go to an event, come back home or at office, type your story, send it out, and you're done, right? Of course, you meet people as part of your job, but your job is not so much dependent on stakeholders, which is the case here. Another thing that's different and needs a different level of skill set is, I think we all have to learn to manage our time better. In a corporate job, there's so much more to do. As a journalist, you can spend days on a political story, and that's not the case when you're on the corporate side. So we learn to manage our time better. Time anyways is not at leisure for most, but where on the corporate side there's so many things more to do, and it's just not defined by one thing that you're putting out. There's so much more responsibilities that you take on while you grow, and also team management and all of that, which is business jargons that we'll all get used to soon.
Okay, so you mentioned that you've had like 6 years experience as a journalist. What inspired the change? Why the change to a corporate branding job? And was there any specific moment that influenced you into getting into branding?
So there's a professional aspect and a very personal aspect to this, and I'll be candid. I'm always candid with media students, so they know what the other side is like. So the professional part, I'd spent 6 years, and as a business journalist, I did have options, say from other channels that I could have chosen. I could have, but I was in Bangalore. Mumbai is the place to be for business reporters and journalists. I was asked if I wanted to move to Mumbai. The city did not excite me. Personally, I'm a Bengaluru Hudga, so I love being here. I've been here all my life. I didn't want to leave the city. So the opportunity, so I'd done a lot over 6 years. I could have continued to, but I felt I wanted to challenge myself and do something interesting. And I chose branding because I was meeting communicators day in and day out across brands. I was tracking listed companies, Infosys, real estate companies. I loved how they used to pitch stories to me, why I told them down, when they were aggressive. So I thought that's a space. A lot of the journalists do make the switch, but not everyone gets used to it. Some of them just go back to being journalists because it's not an easy switch. So for me, I wanted to challenge myself, and I felt that was the right time. Personally, and this is very personal, but putting it out there, in media, a lot of what you do is driven by passion. The money is there, is decent, is not great at the junior level. I mean, if you spend about 15-20 years in the media and you're at a senior rank, you could really earn really well. But when you start off, right, the first few years is a lot more of hard work. And I think as media students, what gives us happiness is also when we put a story out or when we put a documentary out. There's so much hard work and we're spending money, our pocket money on a documentary film. But what gives us happiness is when we see that movie come to life. And I think that passion kept me going for 6 years. But when I had my first son, I realized I have bigger bills to pay, and the money is better on the branding side. So a personal decision was, I realized I'd done this for 6 years. It was a passion project. And also being on this side, I'm still close to media. I get to meet you guys. I'm in touch with academia. I'm in touch with my media friends. I do some videos for my brands and things like that. So it's helped me stay. So it's the best of both worlds, where I get to still be part of the media industry. But if I'm asked, do I miss media? Yes, I think once a journalist, always a journalist. But am I having fun this side? Definitely yes. It's so much more challenging and rewarding that way.
Okay, so we've talked about the differences in both of the fields. We also mentioned some similarities in both of the fields. If there was something that you, as you took as your experience in your journalism profession, if there's something that you took to your branding field, what is it?
I think persistence, very, very important. So I remember if I was chasing someone for an interview, I would give an example of Mr. Nandan Nilekani, Infosys founder, he's the Aadhaar architect also. So I think I chased him at multiple events to get one sit-down interview with him, and he refused. I was this rookie reporter, I was young. But he gave up at one point. I think it was the 20th event that I was chasing, and I used to just go to him and smile and say, "Hi sir, how are you doing? Rahul here, I'd love an interview." I said, "Rahul, some other time." I did it for 20 times and he realized, damn, this guy's not giving up. And I did get that half an hour sit down interview with him, which was a big deal that time. The interview was aired multiple times during the day. So I think here also in branding, I have taken this persistence with me, which is if you want something closed, you will chase it. If you're chasing a story, if I'm chasing a brand story, a brand campaign, or a marketing campaign, or if I'm trying to push my story to one of the journalists, I ensure I'm persistent about it. Two is being authentic and truthful. In media, we say authentic stories. Brands, generally, the assumption is, "Aurella sulle heltare," right? Like brands are trying to sell their story. But I, coming from the media background as a journalist, I ensured even the brand stories that I was telling were authentic, were true, and rooted back in honesty. And I think honesty always clicks that way in the long term.
Okay, talking about some challenges in the branding industry, AI has been a topic of debate for quite a while now. So some people say it's an aid, and some people call it a hurdle to a person's creativity and expression. So in terms of branding, what do you think AI is? Is it an aid or is it a block to someone's creativity?
I think that's a great question. So AI is a reality. I think none of us anticipated 5 years back that we'd have something like AI, right? Imagine writing an article. We all spend days refining every line, putting out seeing every comma through it. But now Chat GPT does that for you, right? All you have to do is give an instruction saying, "Hey, I am a Jyoti Nivas College Media student. I have to interview Rahul Dayama. Here's his profile. Suggest me questions to ask." It will even suggest you questions that you can ask, which is not a luxury I had when I started off. We spent hours researching about a company, taking notes, doing it the hard way, and we are glad we did that. So I think AI is a reality. It helps you do your job better. Can it replace humans? No. We are seeing some instances where companies are realizing that there are errors in AI. Two, audiences are also getting very smart. When you read something on Instagram or you read something on LinkedIn, you immediately know this is AI generated or not, right? Like just how it is written, just how. So I think people are preferring true, authentic content. So to answer it in short, it is an aid. I have been embracing AI as much as I could. There's a question if it hampers creativity because it's so easy, right? I take one day to write an article, it does it for me in a minute. But I think for ideating, it's great. For first draft, it's great. We should accept technology. I think as much as we push technology away, we only realize it is a reality of life. So use it, but don't entirely depend on it. Add your personal touch. If you're pulling up a draft from there, like spend 2 hours refining it, get it proofreaded. But what marks really is the stamp of authenticity that you bring as an individual. I think that defines your work also. And there's an AI generated body of work and your generated body of work. Your generated body of work will always be more valuable.
So you've worked on various projects, branding projects. You've worked with companies like Jio and PhonePe. What is one project that left an impact on you?
I think I have two instances from a branding standpoint. So I did not want to be a branding professional. I joined as a corporate communication person, which is public relations, which is saving the reputation of the company and pitching the company to get it covered in the media, right? Very basic, and for non-media students also watching this. But as I was at Zest Money, it was a fintech which I switched over to. In about a year, then my boss said, "Hey, do you want to try your hand at branding?" And I said, "I'm very busy. How much of my time do you want me to spend there? Can I spend 10% of my time?" And she burst out laughing. She said, "As much time that you want to spend, you should." I started getting involved in brand campaigns, which is when I fell in love with the world of brands. I think very interesting projects was Rahul Subramaniam, the stand-up comic. We had an ad campaign at Zest Money featuring him. We spent 2 days with him shooting about 6 ad campaigns. That really got me fascinated with the world of brands. We did another brand campaign with Jeetu, very popularly known as Jeetu Bhaiya from the Kota Factory Panchayat series. Worked on scripting, ideating, what is it that we should shoot. It was a big budget shoot at a bungalow and ensuring those how to manage those star tantrums. Like I was there managing all of that. So I think those two incidents have been very close. Also, at Zest Money, the company was to be acquired by a larger brand. The acquisition did not go through, but that experience also taught me that I think we all take our jobs very, very seriously, and it ends up defining who we are. But that experience also taught me that things can go wrong in life, and we should all not take things personally.
Listening about you talking about your projects, it really perks my curiosity about the process of branding. But branding is a creative process, and like any other creative processes, there should be a skeleton or a framework that you abide by. So can you run us through your process of branding?
Yeah, so I think the branding framework that largely in the marketing world also many believe, but this is also something that's personally to me because I've sort of rewritten the PR book for myself when I started out. I looked at a very fresh journalist lens when I was a PR person. So even as a branding person, I look at it from a comms lens. So this may not be what everyone follows, but what has really worked for me is I think in branding, you really have to figure out what are the USPs of the company. If you're working for a particular brand, say it's a food delivery platform, right? What is your USP? It's so important to put it. Is it the variety of restaurants? Are you saying I will give you food no matter what in 10 minutes? Is it saying that no, I will give you the best quality food? Is it saying that I'm going to get you authentic Rasagullas from Kolkata in Bangalore? So what is the USP, right? I think obsess about that USP, talk to product folks, talk to engineering folks, business teams, CEO, and really know what are the 4 or 5 tangible things that differentiate you. Then play on those themes to get that message across. So once you've identified the message, then what would it really take for this message to be taken by the audience? So then you really brainstorm what works. A lot of markets research is done. I talk to what has worked for me is while I've worked at brands, I talk to a diverse set of people, calling customers up. At Zest Money, we were a fintech that gave out loans. I used to call customers in Assam, in Hyderabad, and just talk to them. And this was an activity we obsessed about in the marketing team, where we spent a day just talking to people. That gave us so much of perspective. You just pick the phone and talk to customers, right? That gives, which is the case if you're a B2C company, which is you're dealing with customers, and if you're servicing larger businesses, then spend time understanding with the sales team on what is problem are we trying to solve and what they think of it. I think this framework has worked, which is staying close to the customer. And three, I think at the end of it, as a journalist, as a PR professional, as a brand, it is storytelling. Right, we are all in the world of stories. Like, we grew up listening to stories from our grandmothers, from our mothers, and even we enjoy certain movies because the story is the crux of it. Right? Yeah, we may watch something that makes no sense once in a while, but what stays with us is authentic storytelling. So how to use the power of storytelling to get that message across is also, and the medium is very important, which is where are you putting this out? Is it Instagram? Is what segment are you targeting? Should this be on LinkedIn? Should it be a hoarding? Does it even call for a brand campaign? Not everything requires a brand campaign. It could just be a creative that you're putting out on one of these platforms. So I think obsessing about these things really are some basics one can consider.
So my next question is basically, I'm asking it on behalf of everyone who wants to get into branding. So as a branding professional, what are some of the skill sets that you look at a person who's trying to get into branding? Like, what are some essential qualities that a person must possess to excel in the profession?
Got it. I'll take that for both branding and corporate communications. If PR, if some of you are PR enthusiasts, because that's where a lot of my time goes. So for PR, also one is I think reading extensively, being updated with what's going around. The business, like if it's a fintech, you should know what's happening in the banking industry. Being obsessively following that industry that you're part of, extremely well read. Two, do you know your competition really well? Three, are you tracking media the right way? Do you know which journalists track a certain story, which publications write stories, and why they write certain kind of stories? So some of these qualities would be, again, it is a lot of hard work in branding or PR, where a lot of time should be spent researching. I think that's one skill set that is valued, that I look for people when I hire them as well. Two, I think willingness to put in the time for the right projects. Not everything can be cooked in 1 hour and served. So being patient and sort of following the process also really helps. The last thing is another quality that all of us should obsess about is the power of documentation, which is really documenting. If I'm having a conversation with a customer, is it documented? Is it shared with the wider community? If I have spoken to a particular journalist, have I shared what the journalist wants? Could be a business insight flaw that they have found out. So how do we document all of that, share it with the wider community in the company, is also something that gets us apart. And four, I think just being passionate, like as storytellers, you can identify when someone is saying a story passionately and when someone is not. So that also is of being passionate is a great thing.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to our last question. Change of careers is usually frowned upon from the society. It's almost taboo. So especially when you've had long years of experience in one of your fields, and the lack of support and the lack of support and the societal pressure, it can discourage a person who wants to change professions. So if there's one advice that you want to give for someone who's looking to change professions, what would it be?
Yeah, I'll tell a very personal story. So in my school, I did very well in my 10th. So my father wanted me to take up science. I wanted to do media studies right when I was in 10th grade, but I said, okay, I'll do science. I did really well in computers, almost got 100 in the 12th grade. Then my dad said, okay, just do engineering now. And I got an engineering seat. But I said, I put down my foot down and said, no, now I'm going to do media studies and this is what I'm going to do. So I think generally when you do take something in the creative side, there's resistance, and rightly so. They feel it's not a stable field, and maybe some of their concerns are right. But for the switch and the advice I'd give, even when I shifted from journalism to the corporate side, a lot of them said you're not going to survive, you will not like it. My journalist friends used to say you're going to come back to the industry, because some of them went and came back. I think giving it time and just being true to oneself. The world is always going to tell you, this is slightly philosophical, but the world is always going to tell you what to do and what to not do. But if you're very clear about this is what I want from my life, and I may go wrong, if I do a mistake, it is my mistake, and always have a plan B. Like if I didn't be a journalist, I'd be a struggling journalist. I think if I was not a good branding person, I would probably go back to writing. I'd probably be a professor. I love the academia. So always have a backup option, have a skill set that is valuable beyond your core job, that is again close to your passion, and that will help you survive.
Thank you so much for making the time, for giving us this interview, Rahul. It was an honor to have interviewed you. This has been our interview with Mr. Rahul Dayama. Thanks for tuning in. This is Poorna Pragna with video reporters Bhanupriya and Sakshi signing off Campulse TV.